I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. My son Benjamin texted me happy birthday 3 days late, asking why I hadn't reminded him. I blocked his access to the family trust fund that same afternoon. By midnight, he'd called 47 times begging me to answer the phone. Let me tell you how we got to this point, because the devil's in the details. And honey, this devil has some serious bite. At 68, I'd been playing ATM to my adult children for so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like to say no. My late husband, Richard, left us very comfortable when he passed 5 years ago. Comfortable enough that our son, Benjamin, and his wife, Ava, could afford their dream house in Westchester, their kids' private school tuition, and Ava's shopping addiction. I lived quietly in my Park Avenue apartment, the same one Richard and I had shared for 30 years. The walls still echoed with his laughter sometimes, especially in the early mornings when I'd make coffee just the way he liked it, out of habit. Old habits die hard, especially when they're all you have left of someone you loved for 4 decades. Every Sunday, I'd drive out to Westchester for family dinner. The drive took exactly 47 minutes without traffic, and I'd spend every minute rehearsing stories to tell my grandchildren, Olivia and Ethan. Stories that might make them look up from their phones and tablets long enough to remember they had a grandmother who adored them. The first few years after Richard died, those Sunday dinners were a lifeline. Benjamin would greet me with warm hugs. Ava would ask about my week, and the kids would at least pretend to be interested in my existence. We weren't perfect, but we were family. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when the change happened. Was it when Benjamin started taking my financial support for granted? When Ava began treating me like an inconvenience rather than family? When my grandchildren started responding to my questions with one-word answers? Their eyes never leaving their screens. Every Sunday, I'd drive to their house. Every holiday, I'd write another check. Every birthday, wedding, or graduation, I'd open my purse without question. I thought I was being generous. Turns out I was being stupid. The last truly happy memory I have with Benjamin was 3 years ago, when we visited Richard's grave together on the anniversary of his death. Benjamin had put his arm around me as we stood there and said, "Dad would be proud of how you've kept the family together, Mom." It was the last time I felt like I mattered to him as a mother, not just as a source of income. Richard and I had built our fortune from scratch. He started a small investment firm in the 70s that grew into a respectable financial services company by the time he retired. We weren't billionaires, but we had enough that our children never wanted for anything. Maybe that was part of the problem. Benjamin had worked for his father briefly after college, but never quite found his footing in the business. Richard was disappointed, but never said so directly. Instead, he set up a trust fund that would support Benjamin and his family after we were gone. Just until he finds his way, Richard had said, but Benjamin never did find his way. He drifted from one half-hearted business venture to another, always with the safety net of his parents' money beneath him. When I think about it now, I realize that the trust fund was the worst gift we could have given our son. It robbed him of the hunger that had driven Richard and me to succeed. Why work hard when everything you want is handed to you? I remember the day Benjamin met Ava at a charity gala 7 years ago. She was striking, tall, elegant, with a smile that could charm anyone, and she certainly charmed Benjamin. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Richard had his reservations about Ava. He thought she was more interested in Benjamin's inheritance than in Benjamin himself, but he kept them mostly to himself. "Sarah," he'd said, "our son is a grown man. We have to let him make his own choices, even if they're mistakes." Richard didn't live to see just how prophetic those words would be. After the lavish wedding which we paid for, of course, Benjamin and Ava decided they needed a house in Westchester. Not just any house. A 5-bedroom colonial on 2 acres with a pool and guest house. And of course, they couldn't afford it on Benjamin's sporadic income. So I wrote a check for $200,000 for the down payment, telling myself it was an investment in my future grandchildren's happiness. Olivia came along a year later, followed by Ethan 2 years after that. They were beautiful children, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. Benjamin and Ava had their dream house, 2 healthy children, and financial security thanks to Richard's trust fund and my continued generosity. But perfection, I've learned, is often just a pretty facade hiding a multitude of cracks. The warning signs had been there for months. Benjamin stopped calling unless he needed something. Ava would barely make eye contact during our visits, too busy scrolling through her phone or coordinating with contractors for their latest home renovation. My grandchildren, Olivia and Ethan, 14 and 12 respectively, had been polite but distant, treating me like an obligation rather than family. But I chose to ignore it all because I believed in family loyalty. I believed love meant sacrifice. I believed that if I just gave enough, did enough, they'd appreciate me. What a fool I was. Last Christmas, I'd overheard Ava complaining to her sister on the phone about having to drag the kids to Mom Wilson's again. Mom Wilson, not Sarah, not Mom, not even Mrs. Wilson. Just an obligation, a duty to be endured. I pretended not to hear, smiling as I carried in the homemade cookies I'd spent all day baking. Olivia took one, mumbled thanks, and immediately returned to her phone. Ethan at least ate 3 before disappearing to play video games. Benjamin was too busy watching football to notice I'd arrived, and Ava gave me a perfunctory hug before returning to her online shopping. I sat alone in the kitchen for 20 minutes before anyone realized I was still there. That should have been my wake-up call, but old habits die hard, and I'd grown accustomed to making excuses for my son and his family. They're busy. They're stressed. They're just going through a phase. The excuses piled up like the unopened birthday gifts I'd sent them over the years. It wasn't until a chance encounter with Benjamin's financial advisor that I began to see the true picture. I was having lunch at Le Bernardin, a rare treat I allowed myself once a month, when I spotted Thomas Green, who had handled some investments for Richard years ago and now worked with Benjamin. "Sarah, lovely to see you," he'd said, stopping by my table. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing well, Thomas. And you?" He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I hope Benjamin's found his footing after that tech investment disaster." "Tech investment?" I asked, genuinely confused. Thomas's face fell. "Oh, I'm sorry. I assumed you knew. Benjamin invested heavily in a tech startup last year. Lost quite a bit when it folded." My heart sank. "How much did he lose?" "I really shouldn't say more," Thomas replied, clearly uncomfortable. "But, well, it was substantial. I was surprised he took such a risk, especially with his credit card debt situation." That was the first I'd heard of any credit card debt. Benjamin had never mentioned financial troubles to me. In fact, he'd just asked for an additional $30,000 the previous month for what he called property taxes and school fees. I'd written the check without question, as I always did. After Thomas left, I sat there stirring my coffee, the food in front of me forgotten. How much didn't I know about my son's finances, and why was he keeping these things from me while still asking for money that evening? I did something I'd never done before. I called James Richardson, our family attorney who managed Richard's estate and trust. "James, I need to know exactly how much money I've given Benjamin over the past 5 years, I said without preamble. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Sarah, are you sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm sure, James. I need to know." 2 days later, I sat in James's office, staring at the numbers on the paper in front of me. In addition to the monthly trust distributions, I'd personally given Benjamin and his family over $800,000 in 5 years. House down payment, renovations, luxury cars, private school tuition, vacations, credit card payments. The list went on and on. "And this doesn't include the gifts, the dinners, the cash I've slipped to the kids," I said quietly. James nodded. "Sarah, may I speak frankly?" "Please do." Richard set up the trust to provide security, not luxury. The distributions were meant to supplement Benjamin's income, not replace it entirely. But from what I can see, Benjamin hasn't had steady employment in over 3 years. I felt a weight pressing on my chest. "What about Ava? She has a marketing degree, doesn't she?" "She hasn't worked since they got married," James confirmed. "Sarah, there's something else you should know. Benjamin took out a second mortgage on the house 6 months ago." "A second mortgage? Why would he need that? We own the house outright." James shook his head. No, Sarah, you provided the down payment, but the house is in their names, and they've been leveraging it to maintain their lifestyle. I felt dizzy with the realization that my son, my own flesh and blood, had been systematically deceiving me while draining my finances, not just the trust fund Richard had set up, but my personal savings as well. What should I do, James? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That depends on what you want to accomplish, he replied carefully. If you want to stop enabling this behavior, we can restructure the trust distributions. But Sarah, be prepared for backlash. People don't usually respond well when their free money is threatened. I left James's office with a heavy heart but a clearer mind than I'd had in years. I needed time to think, to plan my next move carefully. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The following week was my 68th birthday. I didn't expect much. Benjamin and his family had forgotten my birthday entirely the previous year. But I still hoped. Foolishly. Perhaps, but hope is the last thing to die in a mother's heart. I spent the morning at the salon, treating myself to a haircut and manicure. The stylist, Maria, had been doing my hair for 20 years and knew about Benjamin's forgetfulness the year before. Any plans with the family today? She asked as she worked. We'll see, I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I'm making Benjamin's favorite chocolate cake, just in case. Maria squeezed my shoulder gently but said nothing. Some hurts are too deep for words. Back at home, I spent 2 hours in the kitchen, my arthritic hands struggling with the mixing bowl, but determined to create something special, something that would remind Benjamin how much his mother loved him. The same cake I'd made for him every year since he was 5. Rich chocolate with raspberry filling, topped with ganache. Richard used to joke that he married me for that cake alone. When the cake was done, I texted Benjamin, a simple message. Cake's ready whenever you want to stop by. No response. I waited all day. Every time a car passed outside, I'd peek through the curtains, hoping to see his silver BMW pulling up. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap, thinking it was him calling to apologize for being late. But the hours ticked by. Morning became afternoon, afternoon became evening, and evening became another sleepless night. The chocolate cake sat untouched on my kitchen counter, a painful reminder of my own naivety. I called Olivia around 6 p.m., wondering if perhaps they were planning a surprise. Grandma, she sounded genuinely confused to hear from me. Hi, sweetheart. I was just wondering if you and your family were planning to come over today. For what? The innocent question cut deeper than any knife. It's my birthday. Olivia. Oh! Her voice rose in pitch. I forgot. Sorry. Grandma. Happy birthday. Thank you, dear. Is your father around? He and Mom are at some work thing for Dad's new project. I'm not sure when they'll be back. Work thing. New project. More lies. Most likely. I see. Well, tell them I called. Will you? Sure, Grandma. Sorry again about your birthday. I hung up, fighting back tears. Not even my grandchildren remembered. And Benjamin was apparently too busy with his non-existent work thing to even send a text. The chocolate cake sat untouched on my kitchen counter for 3 days, growing stale like my hope. On the 4th day, I threw it away, fighting back tears as I scraped Richard's favorite recipe into the garbage disposal. That's when reality hit me like a freight train. My own son had forgotten my birthday. Not delayed, not postponed, completely forgotten. I'd spent decades putting everyone else's needs first. When Benjamin got divorced from his first wife, I'd helped with his legal fees. When he remarried Ava, I'd paid for their honeymoon to Italy. When they couldn't afford their house down payment, I'd written a check for $200,000 without blinking, and this was my thanks. Radio silence on the one day that should have mattered. I was pouring myself a second cup of coffee on the 4th day when my phone finally buzzed. Benjamin's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, my traitorous heart skipped with hope. Hey, Mom. Happy birthday. Sorry it's a few days late. You should have reminded me about it. I should have reminded him, as if it were my responsibility to ensure my own child remembered the day I'd given birth to him. I stared at that message for a full 10 minutes, reading it over and over, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest where warmth used to live. I should have reminded him, like I was some random acquaintance instead of the woman who'd carried him for 9 months, who'd walked the floors with him during colicky nights, who'd worked 2 jobs to pay for his college education before Richard's business took off. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The old Sarah would have typed back something gracious. "Oh, don't worry about it, sweetheart. These things happen." The old Sarah would have made excuses for him, probably invited him over for dinner to make up for his oversight. But the old Sarah had died somewhere between throwing away that birthday cake and reading his pathetic non-apology. Instead, I called my lawyer. "Dorothy, James Richardson had been our family attorney for 15 years. What can I do for you today?" "I need to make some changes to the family trust arrangements," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "How quickly can you restructure the distributions?" There was a pause. James knew about the monthly payments to Benjamin's family. He'd helped set up the automatic transfers when Richard died. "May I ask what prompted this decision?" I almost laughed. What prompted it? 20 years of taking me for granted. A birthday forgotten like yesterday's trash. A text message that treated me like an inconvenience. Let's just say I've had a change of perspective about family obligations. James worked faster than I'd expected. By Tuesday afternoon, all automatic payments to Benjamin's accounts had been suspended. The monthly transfer that covered their mortgage, car payments, and Ava's credit card simply stopped flowing. I didn't tell them. Why should I? They'd never asked where the money came from. Never questioned whether I could afford their lifestyle. Never once said, "Thank you, Mom, for bankrolling their American dream." Instead, I waited. And you know what? The wait was almost enjoyable. For the first time in years, I felt like I held the cards instead of constantly folding. It took exactly 6 days. I was reading in my favorite armchair, enjoying a cup of tea in the blessed silence of my own thoughts when my phone started ringing. Benjamin's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately, then again. By the 4th call, I was genuinely amused. Where was all this urgency when it came to remembering my birthday? The 5th call came with a text. "Mom, please pick up. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank." Mistake? That's what he called it when the gravy train finally derailed. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled back into my chair. Let him sweat a little. Lord knows I'd sweated plenty over the years, wondering if I was doing enough, giving enough, being enough for children who couldn't be bothered to remember when I was born. The calls kept coming. 9, each one more frantic than the last. By the time I went to bed that night, Benjamin had called 23 times. Ava had called 6. They'd left a total of 14 voicemails, each one more panicked than the last. The first few had been confused. "Mom, I think there's been a banking error. Can you call me back?" By message 7, confusion had turned to worry. "Mom, please call us. The mortgage payment bounced and we need to figure out what happened." By message 12, worry had become panic. "Sarah, this is Ava. We need to talk now." The last message, left at 11:47 p.m., was pure desperation. Benjamin's voice was strained, exhausted. "Mom, I know you're angry about the birthday thing. I'm sorry. Okay, but this isn't funny anymore. Please call me back. We need that money. We need that money. Not we miss you, or we're worried about you, or we love you. Just we need that money." Perfect. After all these years, he'd finally told me the truth about what I meant to them. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in months. The next morning brought a new experience. The sound of someone pounding on my apartment door at 7:30 a.m. I took my time getting dressed, choosing a comfortable sweater and my favorite pearls, the ones Richard had given me on our 30th anniversary. If Benjamin and Ava wanted to have this conversation, I was going to look dignified while I had it. Through the peephole, I could see them both standing in the hallway looking harried and desperate. Benjamin was pacing, running his hands through his hair. Ava stood rigid, clutching her designer purse like a weapon. I opened the door with a smile. "Good morning, dears. What brings you by so early?" Benjamin pushed past me into the apartment, Ava following with a face like thunder. "Mom, What the hell is going on? Benjamin demanded. The bank says all transfers from your accounts have been stopped. Our mortgage payment bounced. Our car payments bounced. And Ava's credit cards have been declined. I closed the door and turned to face them. They both looked panicked, overwhelmed, like children who'd suddenly discovered the world didn't revolve around them. Would you like some coffee? I asked pleasantly. We don't want coffee, Ava snapped. We want to know why you've cut off our money without warning. Our money. How interesting that Ava thought money I'd earned, inherited, and managed was somehow theirs by right. I walked to the kitchen and began preparing coffee anyway, taking my time measuring grounds and adding water. Let them watch me move at my own pace for once. I've been doing some thinking lately, I said conversationally, about family dynamics, financial responsibility, basic human courtesy, things like remembering important dates. Benjamin had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, if this is about your birthday. Oh, it's about so much more than that, I interrupted, turning to face them. Your birthday was just the final straw. Do you know how long it's been since either of you asked how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, whether I need anything? They stared at me blankly. I'll tell you, I continued. 14 months. 14 months since either of you treated me like a person instead of a bank account. Ava stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. That's not fair. We invite you to family dinners. You invite me to dinners where you ignore me while discussing renovations I'm paying for, vacations I'm funding, and private schools I'm subsidizing. I'm not a guest at those dinners. Ava, I'm the entertainment. The crazy old lady you tolerate because she writes the checks. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Benjamin sat down heavily on my couch, the fight going out of him as he realized I wasn't bluffing. Mom, he said quietly, I know we haven't been the most attentive lately, but cutting us off completely, that's extreme. Extreme coming from someone who'd forgotten his mother's birthday and then blamed her for not reminding him. Is it extreme? Benjamin, let me put this in perspective for you. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd prepared with James's help. In the 5 years since your father died, I've given your family $847,000 in direct payments alone. That's not including gifts, holidays, special occasions, or the house down payment. Just monthly support payments. Nearly $1 million in cash transfers. Ava went pale. I don't think she'd ever added it up. In return, I continued, you visited me exactly 32 times. That comes out to roughly $26,000 per visit. I've attended 14 family events where I was treated like an obligation. That's about $60,000 per event where I was made to feel unwelcome. Benjamin opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You've called me to ask about my health or well-being exactly 7 times in 5 years. 7 times. Benjamin, but you've called to ask for money 43 times. The numbers hung in the air like an indictment, because that's exactly what they were. The financial arrangement we had was based on family love and mutual respect, I said calmly. When you stopped providing love and respect, I stopped providing money. It's simple economics, Ava found her voice. You can't just abandon your family because your feelings got hurt. I looked at her, this woman who'd never worked a day since marrying my son, who'd spent my money on designer handbags while barely acknowledging my existence. I'm not abandoning anyone, Ava. I'm simply requiring the same courtesy I've always shown you. Acknowledgement, appreciation, basic human decency. If that's too much to ask, then perhaps we need to reevaluate what family means. Benjamin leaned forward, his voice taking on the wheedling tone he'd used as a child when he wanted something. Mom, we can do better. We can call more, visit more. But we need that money. The house. The kids' schools. Everything depends on it. Everything you've built depends on my generosity, I corrected. And generosity requires gratitude, not entitlement. I stood up, smoothing down my sweater. I'm going to make you both a proposition. I walked to the window, looking out at the bustling street below. From up here, people looked like ants scurrying around with their urgent little purposes, much like my son and daughter-in-law were about to do. Here's my offer, I said, turning back to face them. You have 30 days to show me that I'm more than just a funding source to this family, Not through desperate phone calls or panicked visits, but through genuine interest in my life as a person. Benjamin and Ava exchanged glances, and I could see the calculation in their eyes. They were already strategizing, figuring out how to manipulate me back into opening my checkbook. "What exactly does that mean?" Ava asked carefully. "It means treating me like family instead of like an ATM. It means remembering important dates without being reminded. It means asking about my day, my health, my interests, my feelings. It means including me in conversations instead of talking around me. It means showing basic respect for the woman who's been subsidizing your lifestyle." I sat back down, enjoying the way they hung on my every word for once. If after 30 days I feel valued as a person rather than just a provider, we can discuss resuming some level of financial support. Not the blank check arrangement you've enjoyed, but something more reasonable. Benjamin's face brightened with hope. "We can do that, Mom, absolutely." "But," I continued, holding up one finger, "if I detect even the slightest hint of manipulation, if this feels like a performance designed to get my money flowing again, the offer is permanently withdrawn." And I do mean permanently. Ava's mask of composure was slipping. "What are we supposed to do in the meantime? We have mortgage payments, car payments, the kids' tuition." "The same thing millions of families do," I said pleasantly. "You'll figure it out. Benjamin makes a decent salary. You could get a job. You could downsize the house, change schools, sell one of your cars. You know, all the things people do when they live within their actual means." The word job seemed to physically pain Ava. She'd married Benjamin straight out of college and had never worked. The idea of actual employment was apparently terrifying. "You're being incredibly cruel," she whispered. "Am I, or am I finally being honest about what this relationship has become?" I stood up again, signaling that our meeting was over. 30 days, I repeated. "Starting now, and remember, I've had 5 years to perfect the art of detecting genuine emotion versus calculated performance. Don't insult my intelligence by trying to fake your way through this." They left without another word, Ava practically trembling with fury, Benjamin looking stunned and lost. After they were gone, I poured myself that glass of wine I'd been looking forward to and settled back into my chair. The next 30 days were going to be very interesting indeed. What I didn't know then was just how twisted those 30 days would become, or that beneath the surface of my son's financial desperation lurked something far more sinister, something that would test not just our relationship, but my very sense of self. As I sipped my wine and watched the sunset paint my living room in shades of gold, I had no way of knowing that cutting off Benjamin's money was just the beginning. The real battle for my dignity, my legacy, and perhaps even my freedom, was about to begin. The phone calls started the very next day. Not frantic demands this time, but carefully crafted performances that would have impressed Broadway directors. "Hi, Mom, just calling to see how you're feeling today." Benjamin's voice was sugar-sweet through the receiver. "I realized we never ask about your health enough." I was standing in my kitchen preparing lunch, and I nearly laughed out loud. In 5 years, this man had never once called to ask about my health unless he was making small talk before asking for money. "I'm fine, Benjamin. How thoughtful of you to ask." "Great. And hey, I was thinking maybe we could have lunch this week. Just the two of us. Like old times." Old times. When exactly had we ever had regular lunch dates? I couldn't remember a single instance of Benjamin suggesting we spend time together without Ava or the children as buffers. "That sounds lovely," I said, curious to see how far they'd take this charade. "Perfect. Oh, and Mom, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about not appreciating you enough." "You're absolutely right. We've been terrible family members." The script was almost insulting in its transparency, but I played along. "I appreciate you saying that, dear." After he hung up, I checked my watch. 47 minutes later, Olivia called. My 14-year-old granddaughter had never initiated a phone conversation with me in her life. Our interactions were limited to polite responses when I asked her direct questions during family dinners. "Hi, Grandma Sarah. I just wanted to call and tell you about my day at school." The words sounded rehearsed, like she was reading from cards. Poor child. Her parents had obviously coached her on what to say. "That's wonderful. Olivia, tell me all about it," She launched into a detailed account of her classes, her friends, her teachers. Everything was wonderful and amazing, and she just couldn't wait to share it all with her beloved grandmother. It broke my heart, honestly, not because she was lying, but because this forced conversation revealed how little we actually knew each other. Her parents had weaponized their own daughter, turning her into a pawn in their desperate game. When she finished her performance, I said gently, "Olivia, sweetheart, you don't have to do this." "Do what, Grandma?" "Pretend to be interested in talking to me because your parents told you to call." There was silence on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more genuine. "Dad said you were mad at us, that maybe you wouldn't be our grandma anymore if we didn't try harder. Those bastards. They'd terrified their own children to manipulate me. Olivia, listen to me carefully. I will always be your grandmother, no matter what happens between me and your parents. That will never change. Do you understand?" "Yes, Grandma?" "Good. Now, do you actually want to talk to me? Or would you rather go do whatever 14-year-olds do when they're not being forced to call their grandmothers?" She giggled, and for the first time, she sounded like herself. "Can I go? I have homework." "Of course you can go. I love you, Olivia." "Love you too, Grandma." The manipulation had officially begun. Day 5 brought flowers. An enormous arrangement of white roses and lilies arrived at my door with a card that read, "Thinking of you always. Love, Benjamin and Ava." I'd never received flowers from them before. Not for my birthday, not for Mother's Day, not even when Richard died. But now, when they needed my money, suddenly they were thoughtful enough to spend $200 on an ostentatious display. I put the flowers on my dining room table and waited for the follow-up call. It came within an hour. "Hi, Mom. Did you get our little surprise?" Ava's voice was artificially bright. "They're lovely. Thank you. I just wanted you to know how much we appreciate everything you've done for us over the years. I know I haven't always been the best daughter-in-law, but I want to change that." The best daughter-in-law, this woman had barely spoken to me in 2 years, except to make snide comments about my clothes or my cooking. "That's very kind of you to say, Ava. I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping this weekend. Maybe get our nails done. Have a girls' day. A girls' day with the woman who once told Benjamin I was too needy when I'd called to check on them during a hurricane." "I'll think about it," I said. Day 8 brought a handwritten letter from Ethan, my 12-year-old grandson. His usually terrible handwriting was surprisingly neat, suggesting he'd been made to write multiple drafts. "Dear Grandma Sarah," it began. "I have been thinking about how awesome you are and how I don't tell you enough. You are the best grandma in the world, and I love you so much. I hope we can hang out more and do fun things together. Love, Ethan." The letter was sweet, but it reeked of parental coaching. Ethan had never used the word awesome in his life, and he'd certainly never expressed any desire to hang out with me. I called Benjamin that evening. "The letter from Ethan was very touching," I said. "Oh, that was all his idea. He's been feeling really bad about not being closer to you." "Benjamin?" "Yes. Stop lying to me. I know you coached him to write that letter just like you coached Olivia to call me." Silence. "Mom, I don't know what you—" "Stop. Just stop. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on honesty, not performances, not manipulations, not scripted phone calls from confused children. We're trying to show you we care. You're trying to show me you can follow a script when money is on the line. There's a difference." I hung up, feeling exhausted. This wasn't working the way I'd hoped. Instead of genuine change, I was watching them dig themselves deeper into deception. But I'd given them 30 days, and I was a woman of my word. I just wasn't sure how much more amateur theater I could stomach. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of this family drama, something darker was brewing. I just didn't know it yet. The day after I received Ethan's letter, I was sorting through old papers in Richard's study when I found something odd, a bank statement from an account I didn't recognize. It was dated 3 years ago, shortly after Richard's death, and showed a transfer of $50,000 to an LLC called Johnson Family Investments. I'd never heard of Johnson Family Investments, And I certainly didn't remember authorizing a $50,000 transfer during that difficult time. I set the statement aside, making a mental note to ask James about it. That evening, Benjamin called again, this time inviting me to Sunday dinner. "The kids miss you," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "And Ava's making your favorite pot roast." I almost declined, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see how far they'd take this performance when they had to maintain it for an entire evening. "That sounds nice," I said. "What time should I come?" "6 o'clock. And Mom, thank you for giving us this chance. We won't let you down." Sunday dinner was a masterclass in performative affection. Benjamin greeted me with a hug that lasted just a bit too long to be comfortable. Ava had her hair styled the way I once mentioned I liked it years ago. The children were scrubbed clean and dressed in their best clothes, like they were meeting a distant relative for the first time. "Sarah, you look wonderful," Ava gushed, taking my coat. "That color really brings out your eyes." I was wearing the same navy blue dress I'd worn to countless family dinners before. Ava had never commented on it once. The house was spotless, which was unusual. Typically, their home had the lived-in chaos of a busy family with 2 children. Now it looked like a showroom, with fresh flowers on every surface and not a toy in sight. "We've rearranged the living room," Benjamin said proudly. "What do you think?" "It's lovely," I replied, though in truth the only difference I could see was that my wedding photo with Richard had been moved to a more prominent position on the mantel. Dinner was an exhausting parade of compliments, reminiscences, and carefully orchestrated family harmony. Ava asked about my volunteer work at the library. Benjamin wanted to hear all about my book club. The children shared amusing anecdotes from school that seemed suspiciously well rehearsed. Not once did anyone mention money. Not once did anyone check their phone at the table. Not once did anyone interrupt me or change the subject when I was speaking. It was perfect, and perfectly fake. After dessert, a store-bought cheesecake that Ava tried to pass off as homemade, Benjamin suggested we look through old family albums. As we flipped through photos of Benjamin's childhood, I noticed Olivia watching me with an intensity that seemed out of place. "Grandma," she said suddenly, when her parents were occupied with finding another album, "are you going to make Mom and Dad move out of our house?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" Her eyes darted toward her parents, who were still across the room. I heard them talking. Mom was crying. She said we might have to move to an apartment if you don't start sending money again. I took Olivia's hand. "Your parents have some financial decisions to make, but no one's going to be homeless. I promise." She nodded, but didn't look convinced. "Dad's been really weird. He's on the phone all the time in his office with the door locked, and I heard him tell Mom something about Plan B if you don't come around." My blood ran cold. "Plan B?" Olivia shrugged. "I don't know what it means. Mom got mad at him for saying it where I could hear." Before I could ask more, Benjamin returned with another album, his smile a bit too bright. "Found it, Mom. Remember this trip to Cape Cod?" I smiled and nodded, but my mind was racing. What was Plan B, and why did it make Ava angry that Olivia had overheard? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of false cheer and manufactured nostalgia. When it was time to leave, Benjamin walked me to my car. "It was really great having you over, Mom," he said, his hand on my arm. "Just like old times." "It was lovely," I lied. "Thank you for inviting me. So, do you think, have we been doing better with the whole appreciation thing?" And there it was, the real purpose of the evening, laid bare by his impatience. "It's only been 9 days. Benjamin, we still have 3 weeks to go." His face fell. "Right, of course, I just thought, never mind. Drive safely." "Mom." As I drove home, I couldn't shake Olivia's words from my mind. Plan B. What were Benjamin and Ava planning if their performance didn't convince me to turn the money back on? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 weeks into their performance, I discovered something that changed everything. I was having lunch with my friend Margaret at our favorite cafe when she mentioned seeing Ava at the country club. "She was telling everyone about your mental breakdown," Margaret said, her voice carefully neutral. "Said you'd been acting erratic since Richard died. making impulsive financial decisions. The coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. What, apparently you've become difficult to manage, and they're considering having you evaluated for competency issues. The words hit me like a physical blow. While they were sending me flowers and love letters, they were simultaneously laying the groundwork to have me declared mentally unfit. Margaret, are you absolutely certain? Sarah, I've known you for 30 years. You're the most sharp-minded person I know. But Ava was very convincing. She had several women nodding along sympathetically. I spent the rest of lunch in a daze. When I got home, I immediately called James Richardson. James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has anyone contacted you asking about my mental state or financial competency? There was a long pause. Sarah, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Benjamin called last week. He said he was concerned about some unusual financial decisions you'd been making. He asked about the process for having someone's competency evaluated. My hands started shaking. What did you tell him? I told him that you were completely competent and that any such evaluation would be a waste of everyone's time. But Sarah, the fact that he asked... I know what it means. After I hung up, I sat in my chair and stared at those white roses they'd sent. Every petal suddenly looked like a lie. Every fragrant bloom was part of an elaborate deception designed to make me look unstable when I inevitably rejected their fake affection. They weren't trying to win me back. They were building a case against me. I thought about all the carefully orchestrated phone calls, the sudden interest in my well-being, the flowers, the children's letters. It wasn't love. It was evidence. Evidence that they were caring, attentive family members dealing with a difficult, irrational old woman who'd cut them off without cause. The revelation should have crushed me. Instead, it filled me with a cold, calculating fury that I hadn't felt since I was young enough to fight dirty. They wanted to play games, fine, but they'd forgotten that I'd been playing this game a lot longer than they had, and I was much, much better at it. I spent the weekend planning. By Monday morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I called James and scheduled an appointment for a complete mental competency evaluation with the most respected neuropsychologist in Manhattan. Sarah, you don't need to, James started. Yes, I do. When this is over, I want documentation that I'm of sound mind and capable of making my own financial decisions. Next, I called Benjamin. Mom, how are you feeling today? The fake cheerfulness was starting to grate. Actually, Benjamin, I've been doing some thinking about our conversation, and I've decided you're right. About what? About resuming the financial arrangements. I've been too harsh, too emotional. I miss our family dinners. I miss being part of your lives. I want to fix this. The relief in his voice was palpable. Mom, that's wonderful I knew you'd come around. You're such a loving, generous person. I want to have dinner this Friday, all of us, including Olivia and Ethan. I want to apologize properly and discuss how we move forward. Of course, Ava will be so relieved. She's been worried sick about you. I'll bet she has. That afternoon, I made another call to a private investigator named Patricia Chen, someone James had recommended for discreet family matters years ago when Richard was having business partner issues. Mrs. Wilson, I need to know everything about my son and daughter-in-law's financial situation. Bank accounts, credit cards, debts, assets, spending patterns. I also need you to check if they've been consulting with any attorneys recently. Something feels off about their behavior. Patricia had already done preliminary work on my family during Richard's business disputes, so she had existing files and contacts. Her updated report arrived Thursday morning, and it was even worse than I'd suspected. Benjamin and Ava were drowning. Beyond the obvious expenses I'd been covering, they had racked up massive credit card debt. Ava's shopping addiction was far more severe than I'd realized. They owed money on both cars, had taken out a second mortgage on the house, and were behind on Ethan's tuition payments. But the most interesting discovery was a bank account I didn't know about. An account where they'd been depositing and immediately withdrawing large sums of money for the past 2 years. My money. They'd been taking the funds I provided and moving them through a separate account before paying their bills. Why would they do that unless they were planning something? The answer came in the form of financial planning documents Patricia had uncovered. Documents showing that they'd been working with a lawyer to establish guardianship over my assets since Richard's death. It started right after the funeral, when I'd been grief-stricken and making large financial gifts to cope with my loss. They'd been planning this for 5 years. The gradual distance, the increasing demands, the casual cruelty. It was all designed to establish a pattern. The generous but unstable widow who needed protection from her own poor judgment. I thought I was teaching them a lesson about respect and gratitude. They'd been playing a much more dangerous game. Patricia's report also contained something else, something that made my blood run cold. Benjamin had consulted with a Dr. Gregory Morrison, a psychiatrist who specialized in geriatric mental health. According to his credit card statements, Benjamin had paid for 3 consultations in the past month. Patricia had managed to get hold of Dr. Morrison's notes through methods I didn't want to know about. The notes indicated that Benjamin was seeking a psychiatric evaluation of his mother, me, whom he described as increasingly paranoid, erratic, and financially irresponsible. Dr. Morrison had noted that he couldn't evaluate a patient he hadn't seen, but had advised Benjamin on the legal process for establishing guardianship over a parent deemed mentally incompetent. 5 years of planning, 5 years of systematically setting me up to lose control of my own life and finances. Friday dinner was going to be very interesting indeed. As I prepared for the confrontation, I received an unexpected call. It was Olivia, using a friend's phone. "Grandma, can I talk to you?" "Of course, sweetheart." "What's wrong?" "I'm scared. Grandma, Dad's been acting really weird. He keeps saying everything's going to be fine once they handle you. What does that mean?" My heart ached for her. "Olivia, where are you now?" "At my friend Zoe's house. I'm supposed to go home in an hour." "And where's your brother?" "He's at soccer practice. Dad's picking him up at 5. I made a quick decision. "Olivia, listen to me. I want you to go home as planned. Act normal. Don't tell your parents we talked. I'll see you at dinner tonight. And I promise I'll fix this. Can you trust me?" "Yes, Grandma?" "Good girl. Everything's going to be okay." After I hung up, I called James again. "James, I need to add something to our plan. I'm concerned about my grandchildren." By the time I arrived at Benjamin and Ava's house that evening, I was armed with more than just Patricia's report. I had a secret weapon that neither of them would see coming. They'd gone all out for this dinner, using their good china and even lighting candles. Emma and Ethan seemed genuinely happy to see me, which was the only real bright spot in this elaborate production. "Mom, you look wonderful," Ava gushed, though her smile never reached her eyes. "That dress is so flattering." I was wearing the same black dress I'd worn to Richard's funeral. She'd complimented it before, back when she was still pretending to like me. "Thank you, dear. You look lovely as always." Benjamin raised his wine glass. "I want to make a toast to family, to forgiveness, and to Mom for being the most generous, loving woman we know." "To Grandma," Olivia and Ethan chorused, and their enthusiasm was genuine enough to make my heart ache. We made it through the appetizer and main course with their performance in full swing. They asked about my health, my hobbies, my plans for the holidays. They laughed at my stories, complimented my jewelry, and treated me like the beloved family matriarch they'd never actually considered me to be. It was masterful. Really. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have been fooled. After dessert, I stood up. "I have something I want to say to all of you." Benjamin and Ava leaned forward expectantly, probably anticipating my tearful apology and promise to restore their funding. "These past 2 weeks have been so enlightening. Benjamin, your sudden interest in my daily health has been touching. Ava, your invitation to go shopping was so thoughtful. And children, your letters and phone calls have meant the world to me." They were practically glowing with anticipation. "It's made me realize how much I've been missing, how important it is to be truly involved in each other's lives." Benjamin nodded eagerly. "Exactly. That's exactly what we've been trying to show you. Which is why I've decided to be much more involved in managing all of our affairs. I met with James Richardson yesterday to review the family trust documents." Ava's smile flickered slightly. I also had a complete psychological evaluation done, just to make sure I'm making sound decisions. Clean bill of mental health. By the way, Benjamin's face went pale. And I hired a private investigator to do a thorough financial review. Very thorough. The silence in the room was deafening. I reached into my purse and pulled out Patricia's report, setting it on the table between us. Did you know it's illegal to establish financial guardianship over someone through fraudulent means? James was quite concerned when he reviewed your planning documents. Ava stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't know what you think you found, but I found 5 years' worth of evidence that you've been systematically setting me up to be declared incompetent so you could control my assets permanently. The separate bank account, the guardianship paperwork, the witnesses you've been cultivating who can testify to my erratic behavior. Benjamin's voice was barely a whisper. Mom, it's not what it looks like. Really, because it looks like fraud. It looks like elder abuse. It looks like two people who decided it was easier to steal from me than to earn their own living. Olivia and Ethan were staring at their parents with horrified expressions. Here's what's going to happen, I continued calmly. You're going to pack up and move out of this house by the end of the month. The house I bought, by the way, which means I can evict you whenever I choose. You can't do that, Ava hissed. You gave us that house. Check the deed, dear. It's still in my name. I never transferred ownership. An oversight on my part, or perhaps a subconscious suspicion that this day might come. Benjamin had gone from pale to ashen. Mom, please, we can work this out. We made a mistake. A mistake. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is saying something thoughtless in the heat of the moment. What you did was calculated, sustained deception designed to strip me of my autonomy and dignity. That's not a mistake. Benjamin, that's a crime. What about the children? Ava demanded. Are you going to throw your own grandchildren out on the street? That brings me to my next point. I turned to Olivia and Ethan. I've made arrangements for you both to stay with me until your parents find suitable housing, if you want to. Of course. Ethan looked confused, but Olivia nodded immediately. I want to stay with Grandma. Ava's face contorted with rage. You can't take our children. I'm not taking anyone. I'm offering them a stable home while you sort out the mess you've made of your lives. The choice is theirs. Benjamin finally found his voice. Mom, this is insane. You're tearing apart our family over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding you consulted with Dr. Morrison 3 times about having me declared mentally incompetent. You told him I was paranoid and erratic. You were gathering evidence to take away my freedom. Benjamin, my own son. Ethan was crying now. Dad, is that true? Were you going to put Grandma in a home? Benjamin couldn't meet his son's eyes. It wasn't like that. Ethan, we were worried about Grandma. She's been making strange decisions. The only strange decision I made was trusting you with my love and my money. I gathered my purse and stood up. You have 30 days to vacate the house. I'll have James draw up the paperwork. And if we refuse, Ava challenged, then I'll press charges for attempted fraud and elder abuse. I have enough evidence to make a compelling case. Would you like to explain to a judge why you were systematically isolating me from friends and family while simultaneously spreading rumors about my mental state, or why you were diverting my money through a shell account, or why you consulted with a psychiatrist who's never met me about my supposed condition? The fight seemed to go out of them both. Benjamin slumped in his chair, his face in his hands. Ava stood rigid, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. One more thing, I said, turning to leave. I'm changing my will. The entire estate goes to Olivia and Ethan when they turn 25 with a stipulation that none of it can be accessed by either of you under any circumstances. James has already drafted the changes. You bitch, Ava whispered. I turned back, my gaze level. No, Ava, I'm not a bitch. I'm a woman who finally recognized her own worth. Something you might want to think about as you figure out how to support yourself for the first time in your adult life. I held out my hands to my grandchildren. Olivia, Ethan, if you want to come with me now, you can. Or you can stay and pack some things. I'll have rooms ready for you either way. Olivia stood immediately and took my hand. Ethan hesitated. looking between his parents and me. "It's okay if you want to stay tonight. Ethan," I said gently. "This is a lot to take in. My door is always open to you." Ethan nodded, tears still streaming down his face. "You can't just take her," Benjamin said, finally looking up. "We're her parents." "I'm not taking anyone. Olivia is choosing to come with me. And given what she's learned tonight about how her parents operate, can you blame her?" Olivia squeezed my hand. "I want to go with Grandma. I'll come back for my stuff tomorrow." We left Benjamin and Ava sitting in stunned silence at their dining room table, surrounded by the ruins of their elaborate deception. As we drove back to my apartment, Olivia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Did you know about what they were planning?" "Not until recently," I admitted. "I knew something was wrong, but I didn't realize how deep it went." "Is that why you cut off the money, because you found out?" "No, sweetheart. I cut off the money because they forgot my birthday, and it made me realize they only valued me for what I could give them, not for who I am." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "They didn't used to be like this, did they? Dad used to be nice." "Your father was a wonderful boy. Somewhere along the way, he lost sight of what matters. Maybe someday he'll find his way back. And if he doesn't," I squeezed her hand, "then we'll be okay anyway. You, me, and Ethan. We're still a family." As we pulled up to my building, I saw Olivia looking back in the direction we'd come from. "What is it, sweetheart?" "I was just thinking about Mom and Dad. They're probably freaking out right now." "Probably." "Good," she said with a fierceness that surprised me. "They deserve it. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. Sometimes it takes a child to cut through all the adult complications and see the simple truth actions have consequences." Benjamin and Ava were finally facing theirs. What I didn't know then was that their desperate situation would drive them to one last, dangerous gambit, one that would test not just my resolve, but my very survival instinct. As Olivia and I entered my apartment, the doorman handed me a small package that had been delivered earlier that day. Inside was a simple silver locket with pictures of Olivia and Ethan. The note read, "For Sarah, with love from Richard." I froze, staring at the familiar handwriting. "What is it, Grandma?" Olivia asked. "This is from your grandfather," I whispered. "But that's impossible. He's been gone for 5 years. The locket slipped from my fingers, landing on the marble floor with a soft clink. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place, and suddenly I understood the full scope of Benjamin and Ava's deception. It was far worse than I had imagined. The true depths of their betrayal were about to be revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The locket with Richard's handwriting left me shaken to my core. I carefully picked it up from the floor, examining the note again. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Olivia asked, her young face etched with concern. "This handwriting," I whispered. "It's supposedly from your grandfather, but that's impossible." Olivia took the note, studying it. "Maybe Dad had it made before Grandpa died as a surprise." I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. The locket is new, and this note—" I ran my fingers over the familiar curves and slopes of what appeared to be Richard's handwriting. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to make this look like it came from your grandfather." That night, after settling Olivia into the guest room, I called James. "James, something strange happened." I described the locket and the note. Could this be part of their plan, making me believe I'm receiving messages from my dead husband? There was a long silence on the other end. "Sarah, that's disturbing. It could be an attempt to gaslight you to make you question your own perception of reality. Or to make others question it," I said, the realization dawning on me. Imagine if I started telling people Richard was sending me gifts from beyond the grave. "Exactly. It would support their narrative that you're experiencing delusions. James, I need you to expedite that competency evaluation, and I want to move forward with pressing charges. This has gone beyond financial manipulation. I'll call Dr. Levinson first thing in the morning. And Sarah, be careful. People capable of this level of deception might not stop here." After we hung up, I sat in Richard's old armchair, turning the locket over in my hands. Had Benjamin really stooped this low, using his father's memory as a weapon against me? The thought made me physically ill. I was startled by a soft knock at my door. Olivia stood there in borrowed pajamas, looking younger than her 14 years. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She shook her head. "I keep thinking about what Dad and Mom were planning to do to you." I patted the ottoman beside me. "Come sit." She curled up at my feet, resting her head against my knee like she used to do as a small child. "Did you know that Mom has a whole closet of clothes with the tags still on? She hides them from Dad, and sometimes packages come, and she tells me not to tell him. Shopping addiction is a real problem," I said gently. "It's an illness, like alcoholism. Is that why they needed your money, because of Mom's shopping?" "Partly, but it's more complicated than that." I stroked her hair, wondering how much to tell her. She deserved the truth, but she was still just a child. "Your parents made some bad financial decisions, and instead of working to fix those mistakes, they took shortcuts. They tried to steal from you, out of the mouths of babes. Yes. Will they go to jail?" The question hung in the air between us. Would I really send my own son to prison? Could I do that to Olivia and Ethan? I don't know yet, sweetheart. Right now, I'm more concerned about keeping you and Ethan safe and making sure your parents can't hurt anyone else. "I don't think Ethan will come," she said softly. "He still believes everything Dad tells him. He's younger. It's harder for him to understand. I understand because I heard them talking. A lot. Dad doesn't think I listen, but I do." She looked up at me, her eyes too wise for her years. "He said if you didn't give them the money back, they had other options. That Dr. Morrison could help them get conservatorship or something." "Guardianship," I corrected. "They wanted legal control over my finances and maybe even my medical decisions." "That's messed up." "Yes, it is." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of betrayal heavy between us. "Grandma, what's going to happen to us now?" I hugged her close. "We're going to be okay. All of us, even your parents, eventually. But things are going to be different." "Different how?" "Your parents will need to learn to live within their means, to work for what they have instead of expecting it to be given to them. And you and Ethan might need to adjust to a simpler lifestyle for a while." She nodded against my shoulder. "I don't care about that stuff. The big house and fancy clothes and private school. None of it matters if everyone's lying all the time." Wisdom from the mouth of a child. The next morning, I received a call from Patricia Chen. "Mrs. Wilson, I've discovered something concerning. There's been unusual activity in your primary bank account." My heart skipped a beat. "What kind of activity?" "Someone attempted to initiate a large wire transfer yesterday evening, shortly after you left your son's house. The bank flagged it as suspicious and declined the transaction." "How much?" $500,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I felt dizzy. "That's impossible. I didn't authorize any transfers." "No, but someone with your account information tried to." "And Mrs. Wilson, this isn't the first attempt. There have been 3 others in the past month. All declined because they lacked proper authorization." After I hung up, I immediately called the bank and changed all my passwords and security questions. Then I called James again. "James, we have a problem. Someone tried to transfer money out of my account last night." "Benjamin, who else? He must have my account information." "Patricia says there have been previous attempts. This changes things. Sarah, this is clear-cut criminal activity. We need to contact the authorities." "Not yet," I said, surprising myself. "I want more evidence first. Something concrete that ties it directly to Benjamin and Ava." "Sarah, they tried to steal $500,000 from you, and failed. The bank stopped it. I need to know exactly how far they're willing to go before I involve the police." I spent the morning with Olivia, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the chaos swirling around us. We made pancakes for breakfast, then went for a walk in Central Park. She was quieter than usual, processing everything that had happened. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Grandma." His voice was small and tight, like he was trying not to cry. "Ethan, sweetheart, are you okay? Dad and Mom are fighting really bad. Dad threw a plate and it broke. Mom locked herself in their room and won't come out. My heart sank. Where are you now? In my room. I don't know what to do. Is your father still angry? I think so. He's in his office with the door closed. I can hear him yelling on the phone. Ethan, listen to me carefully. I want you to pack a small bag with some clothes and anything important to you. Can you do that? Are you coming to get me? Yes, I'll be there in 45 minutes. If anything scary happens before I arrive, I want you to go to Mrs. Peterson next door. Remember her? The lady with the cats. That's right. Can you do that for me? Yes. Grandma? Good boy. I'll see you soon. I quickly explained the situation to Olivia, who insisted on coming with me. We were halfway to Westchester when my phone rang again. It was Benjamin. Don't you dare come to my house, he hissed, his voice slurred. Had he been drinking, you've done enough damage. Ethan called me. He's frightened. Benjamin, my son called you behind my back. He laughed bitterly. Of course he did. You've poisoned him against me, too. I haven't poisoned anyone against you. Your own actions have done that. You think you're so smart, don't you? The great Sarah Wilson, always knowing what's best for everyone. You've ruined everything. Benjamin, are you drunk? What if I am? My life is falling apart because of you. Your life is falling apart because you tried to defraud your own mother instead of being honest about your financial situation. You never would have understood you and Dad with your perfect financial discipline, always looking down on me for not being as successful. You would have judged me. I would have helped you. Benjamin, honestly helped you, not just thrown money at the problem. But you never gave me that chance. There was silence on the other end, then a heavy sigh. It's too late now anyway. Ava's talking about divorce. The bank called about the mortgage. Ethan's school wants to know when we're going to pay his tuition. Despite everything, my heart ached for my son. It's not too late to start making better choices. Benjamin, easy for you to say. You're not the one about to lose everything. You're not losing everything. You're losing the lifestyle you couldn't afford. There's a difference. Another long silence. I don't want you to come here. I'm coming to get Ethan. He asked me to. He's my son. And he's frightened because his father is throwing plates and yelling. He needs to feel safe right now. I could hear Benjamin's ragged breathing. Finally, he said, Fine, take him. Take everything else while you're at it. The line went dead. When we arrived at the house, Benjamin's car was gone. Ava answered the door, her eyes red and swollen from crying, still wearing the same clothes from dinner the night before. Come to gloat, she asked bitterly. I've come for Ethan. He called me. She stepped aside without a word. Ethan was waiting in the foyer, a small duffel bag at his feet. When he saw me, he ran into my arms. Where's Benjamin? I asked Ava. I don't know. He stormed out an hour ago. Probably at a bar somewhere. She leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. You've won, Sarah. Are you happy now? This isn't about winning, Ava. Isn't it? You've taken our money, our house, and now our children. What else do you want? I want you to stop blaming everyone else for your problems. I want you to get help for your shopping addiction. I want you to be the kind of mother your children deserve. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You think I don't love my children. I think you love them, but your actions have hurt them. Just like Benjamin's have. Ava's eyes filled with fresh tears. What am I supposed to do now I've never lived on my own? I've never even had a real job. For the first time, I saw past the designer clothes and perfect makeup to the frightened woman beneath. Ava had married Benjamin straight out of college. She'd never had to support herself. Her spending might have been a symptom of deeper insecurities, a way to feel in control, to project success. You start over, I said, more gently. You get help. You build a life based on what you can actually afford, not what you wish you had. She looked at me for a long moment, then at Olivia and Ethan standing by my side. Something in her seemed to crumple. I never wanted it to go this far, she whispered. The guardianship thing that was mostly Benjamin's idea. He said it was the only way. The only way to what? Ava. To keep our life together. After that tech investment failed, we were drowning in debt. He was desperate. Desperate enough to steal from his own mother to forge his dead father's handwriting. She looked confused. What are you talking about? I described the locket with Richard's note. Ava's confusion seemed genuine. I don't know anything about that. Benjamin might have. I don't know. He's been acting strange lately. Secretive. A chill ran down my spine. If Ava didn't know about the locket, what else might Benjamin be planning that she wasn't aware of? Ava, has Benjamin ever mentioned something called Johnson Family Investments? Her brow furrowed. No, I don't think so. Why? It's not important right now. I'm taking the children with me. Call me when Benjamin comes home. And Ava, if you decide you want help, real help, not just money, let me know. As we drove back to Manhattan, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something important. Benjamin's desperation, the attempted wire transfers, the mysterious locket, the Johnson Family Investments account, they were all pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. When we arrived home, James was waiting for us. Sarah, we need to talk privately. After making sure Olivia and Ethan were settled, I joined James in the kitchen. What is it? Patricia found something, a life insurance policy taken out on you 6 months ago, for $5 million. The room seemed to tilt. What? Benjamin is the beneficiary. It was issued by a small company based in the Caymans, the same place the wire transfers were attempted to. My blood ran cold. Are you saying what I think you're saying? James's face was grave. I don't know. But combined with everything else, the attempts to have you declared incompetent, the wire transfers, the gaslighting with the locket it's concerning. Benjamin wouldn't. He couldn't possibly. I hope not. But Sarah, we need to take this to the authorities now. This has gone beyond financial manipulation. I sank into a chair, trying to process the implications. Could my own son be planning something even more sinister than financial fraud? There's more, James said. Patricia traced Johnson Family Investments. It's an LLC registered in Delaware 3 years ago. The sole owner is Benjamin, but there's another name associated with it, Thomas Green. Richard's old financial advisor, the one who now works with Benjamin. James nodded. Patricia found communications between them dating back to shortly after Richard's death. They've been planning this for years. Sarah, Green helped Benjamin set up the offshore accounts, advised him on how to gradually gain control of your assets. But why Thomas was Richard's friend? He worked with us for years. For a percentage, apparently. The agreement she found shows Green getting 10% of all assets successfully transferred from you to Benjamin. I felt sick. Not just Benjamin, but someone Richard had trusted, had considered a friend, had conspired against me. We need to go to the police, I agreed finally. But first, I need to confront Benjamin one last time. I need to hear him admit what he's done. Sarah, that's not a good idea. If he's desperate enough to take out a life insurance policy on you, he won't hurt me. Whatever else he's become, he's still my son. James looked unconvinced. At least let me come with you. No, this needs to be between Benjamin and me, but I'll have Patricia watching the house, and I'll keep my phone on. If anything seems wrong, I'll call you immediately. Against James's better judgment, I arranged to meet Benjamin the next day at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Midtown that we used to frequent when he was in college. Public enough to be safe, private enough for a real conversation. When I arrived, Benjamin was already there, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked terrible unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. Thank you for coming, I said, sitting across from him. He didn't meet my eyes. Did I have a choice? You've taken everything else. Benjamin, I know about the life insurance policy. His head snapped up, eyes wide. What? The $5 million policy you took out on me 6 months ago. With the same Cayman Islands company you tried to wire my money to. The color drained from his face. Mom, it's not what you think. Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were planning something unthinkable. It was just insurance, in case something happened to you naturally. You're not getting any younger. And the wire transfers, The attempts to have me declared incompetent, the locket with your father's forged handwriting, were those all just insurance, too? He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. You don't understand. After Dad died, I was drowning. The trust wasn't enough. The business ventures kept failing. Ava kept spending. The kids' schools kept raising tuition. I needed a plan. So you decided to defraud your own mother, possibly worse. No, I never would have. I just wanted control of the assets, to secure our future. By having me declared mentally unfit, by making it look like I was receiving messages from your dead father. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. I was desperate. And Thomas Green, how does he fit into all this? Benjamin's expression changed, a flash of anger crossing his face. Green, that bastard, he approached me after Dad's funeral. Said he knew Dad had left everything in trust that you controlled, offered to help me accelerate my inheritance. And you agreed. Not at first, but then the bills kept piling up. Ava's shopping got worse. The investments failed. And Green kept calling, kept offering solutions. Solutions like Johnson Family Investments, the offshore account you've been funneling my money through. Benjamin looked surprised. You know about that too. I know everything. Benjamin, the only thing I don't know is how my son, the boy I raised, the man I loved, could do this to me. He buried his face in his hands. I don't know either. It just happened. One small decision at a time. And then suddenly we were in so deep that there was no way out. There's always a way out besides crime. Benjamin, easy for you to say. You and Dad never struggled. Everything always came so easily to you both. I laughed bitterly. Easily, your father started his company with a $5,000 loan and worked 80-hour weeks for 20 years. I took night classes to finish my degree while working full-time and raising you. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment until you were 10 because we were saving every penny for your college fund. Nothing came easily to us. Benjamin looked away, unable to meet my gaze. The difference is that we earned what we had. We didn't expect it to be handed to us. So what happens now? He asked quietly. Are you going to have me arrested? What you've done is criminal. But you're still my son. Hope flickered in his eyes. This is what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to sign a confession detailing everything the fraud attempts, the wire transfers, the life insurance policy, your relationship with Green. James has already prepared it. And if I don't, then I go directly to the police with all the evidence Patricia has gathered. And believe me, Benjamin, it's substantial. He swallowed hard. If I sign, what then? Then I don't press charges. But the confession will be held by James, to be used if you ever try anything like this again. You'll move out of the house by the end of the month as planned. You'll get a real job, not another investment opportunity, but actual employment with a paycheck. You'll seek counseling, both individual and financial, and you'll earn back the right to be part of this family. And the trust is permanently amended. You'll receive a modest monthly stipend enough to cover basic necessities. Nothing more. The bulk of the assets will be held for Olivia and Ethan, to be released when they're 25, as I mentioned. You're cutting me out of your will. The old entitlement flashed in his eyes. I'm protecting my grandchildren from their parents' financial irresponsibility. There's a difference. Benjamin stared into his coffee cup for a long moment. And Thomas Green? Patricia is turning over her evidence about him to the Securities and Exchange Commission. His career is over. Another long silence. Finally, Benjamin looked up, defeat written across his face. Where do I sign? 3 weeks later, I sat in my living room with James, reviewing the final paperwork. Benjamin and Ava had moved into a modest apartment in Queens. Benjamin had found a job as a sales representative for a software company, an entry-level position with a base salary plus commission. Ava had enrolled in therapy for her shopping addiction and was taking online courses to update her marketing skills. Olivia and Ethan were still living with me. They visited their parents on weekends, and the arrangement seemed to be working as well as could be expected under the circumstances. The house is officially on the market, James reported. Given the location, it should sell quickly, even in this economy. And the proceeds. After paying off the mortgages and other liens, There should be enough to establish trust funds for Olivia and Ethan's education. I nodded, satisfied. And Green? James smiled grimly. The SEC investigation is ongoing, but he's already been fired from his firm. Several other clients have come forward with similar stories. Good. There was a knock at the door. Olivia, who had been reading in the corner, jumped up to answer it. "Grandma," she called. "Dad's here." Benjamin stood awkwardly in the doorway. He looked better than he had at the coffee shop, clean-shaven, neatly dressed in a button-down shirt and slacks rather than his usual designer casual wear. "Mom, James," he nodded to each of us. "Is this a bad time?" "Not at all," I said. James was just leaving. James gathered his papers, giving me a questioning look. I nodded reassuringly. "I'll call you tomorrow. Sarah," he said, pausing to squeeze my shoulder before leaving. Benjamin sat in the chair James had vacated. "You look well, Mom." "Thank you. So do you." "The job is... It's not what I'm used to, but it's honest work. And my boss says I have potential." "That's good to hear." An awkward silence fell between us. Olivia, sensing the tension, quietly excused herself to her room. "How's Ava?" I asked finally. "Better, I think. The therapy seems to be helping. She's talking about things. Stuff from her childhood that I never knew about. Why she feels the need to buy things, to project a certain image. I'm glad she's getting help." Benjamin fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "Mom, I wanted to apologize, not just for the financial stuff, but for everything. For taking you for granted. For forgetting your birthday. For being a terrible son." "Benjamin, no, please, let me say this." He took a deep breath. "What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. I let greed and entitlement corrupt me until I couldn't recognize myself anymore. Until I was willing to..." He trailed off, unable to articulate the darkest implications of his actions. "The life insurance policy." I finished for him. He nodded, shame evident in every line of his body. I told myself it was just a precaution, that I would never actually... But the fact that I even considered it, that I let things go that far. He looked up, tears in his eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better. For Olivia and Ethan. For myself, and maybe someday, to be worthy of being your son again." I studied him, searching for signs of the old manipulation, the calculated performance, but all I saw was genuine remorse. "Benjamin, you will always be my son. Nothing can change that. But trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild." "I know. I'm prepared for that. I'll do whatever it takes, for as long as it takes." I reached across the coffee table and took his hand. "Then we'll take it one day at a time." He squeezed my hand, a tear sliding down his cheek. "Thank you, Mom, for giving me this chance, for not having me arrested, for everything." "You're still on probation," I reminded him. "One misstep, one attempt to manipulate the situation, and that confession goes straight to the district attorney." "I understand. It won't come to that. I promise." As Benjamin left that day, I felt a cautious hope stir within me. Not the naive hope that had led me to enable his behavior for years, but a clear-eyed hope that acknowledged the difficult road ahead while believing in the possibility of redemption. Over the next few months, small changes accumulated into larger ones. Benjamin worked diligently at his job, even earning a small promotion. Ava completed her online courses and found part-time work at a local marketing firm. They lived modestly, within their means for the first time in their adult lives. Olivia and Ethan eventually moved back in with their parents, though they still spent weekends and holidays with me. Our family dinners resumed, but with a different tone, more honest, more equal, less performative. At Thanksgiving, 6 months after the confrontation, we gathered at my apartment. Benjamin insisted on cooking, something he'd never done before. The turkey was a bit dry, the stuffing a bit bland, but it was the best meal I'd had in years because it was made with genuine effort rather than purchased with my money. After dinner, while Ava and the children were clearing the dishes, Benjamin took me aside. "Mom, there's something I want to give you." He handed me a small package. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a single charm, a small book. "It's not expensive," he said quickly. "I saved up from my commissions, but I remembered you saying once that some of your happiest memories were reading to me when I was little." I touched the charm, deeply moved. "It's perfect. Benjamin, thank you. I'm trying, Mom, every day, to be the son you deserve. I know you are, and I'm proud of the progress you're making." His eyes lit up at that simple praise, not the calculated pleasure of someone who'd successfully manipulated a situation, but the genuine joy of a son who'd earned his mother's approval through honest effort. Later, as I watched my family gathered in the living room, Olivia teaching Ethan a card game, Ava laughing at something Benjamin said, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since Richard died. We weren't perfect. The wounds were still healing, the trust still fragile. Benjamin and Ava still had years of financial recovery ahead of them. The children still bore emotional scars from everything they'd witnessed. But we were a family again. A real family, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than financial dependence and manipulation. As for me, I'd found my voice again. I'd reclaimed my dignity. I'd learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary for healthy relationships. I'd discovered that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst instincts and hold them accountable for their actions. The road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time in years, I was looking forward to the journey. Not as an ATM, not as a means to an end, but as Sarah Wilson mother, grandmother, woman of worth. The silver bracelet caught the light as I moved my wrist, the book charm glinting like a promise. A new chapter had begun, one written not in dollars and cents, but in the currency of genuine love and respect. And that, I realized, was the inheritance worth fighting for. 1 year later, I sat in the audience at Olivia's school play, watching my granddaughter shine on stage. Benjamin and Ava sat beside me, applauding proudly. Ethan, now 13, recorded the performance on his phone to show his friends later. So much had changed in a year. Benjamin had been promoted twice at his job and was now a regional sales manager. The commission structure meant he was earning a decent living, not the extravagant lifestyle he'd once maintained on my money, but comfortable enough. More importantly, he'd earned it himself. Ava had completed her marketing certification and was working full-time now. Her shopping addiction was under control, though she still attended weekly therapy sessions. She'd developed a side business helping small companies with their social media strategies, finding fulfillment in work she'd never imagined herself doing. They'd moved from the Queen's apartment to a modest house in New Jersey. The commute was longer for both of them. But the schools were good, and the mortgage was within their means. They furnished it gradually, buying quality pieces they could afford rather than maxing out credit cards for immediate gratification. The house in Westchester had sold for less than they'd hoped, but enough to clear their debts and establish college funds for the children. The trust I'd restructured provided a small monthly stipend, a safety net, not a lifestyle. As for me, I'd finally started living for myself again. I'd joined a book club, taken up watercolor painting, and even started dating a kind widower named George, whom I'd met at a museum lecture. Life had a fullness to it that I hadn't experienced since Richard died. After the play, we gathered at a local restaurant to celebrate Olivia's performance. Benjamin insisted on paying for dinner, a small gesture, but one that would have been unthinkable a year ago. As we were finishing dessert, Benjamin cleared his throat. "I have an announcement to make," he said. "I've been saving for the past year, and next month, I'm paying back the first installment of what I owe Mom." I stared at him, surprised. "Benjamin, that's not necessary. We've moved past that." He shook his head. "No, it is necessary. For me, I've calculated everything you gave us over the years. It's a huge amount, and it might take me decades, but I'm going to pay back every penny. Not because you're asking for it, but because I need to do it. For myself." Ava took his hand. "We both need to do it. We've set up a separate account. 10% of everything we earn goes into it, and every 6 months, we'll transfer it to you." I was speechless. This wasn't about the money, I didn't need it back, But I understood the deeper significance. This was about accountability, about making amends in a tangible way, about teaching Olivia and Ethan that actions have consequences, and that those consequences don't disappear just because you've apologized. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Say you'll accept it, Benjamin urged. Not as a condition of your forgiveness, but as a symbol of our commitment to making things right. I nodded, too moved to speak. Later that night, as George drove me home, I told him about Benjamin's announcement. That's quite a change from the son you described when we first met, he observed. It is. Sometimes I still can't believe it. Do you trust it? I considered the question carefully. I trust that he's genuinely trying. I trust that he's committed to change. But I'm not naive anymore. I keep my eyes open, and James still holds that confession. George nodded approvingly. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward with wisdom. Exactly. When we reached my apartment, I invited George in for coffee. As we sat in the living room, I found myself looking at the family photos on my mantel. Richard, Benjamin as a child, Olivia and Ethan at various ages, and now a new photo, all of us together at Thanksgiving, genuinely smiling. You know, I said to George, a year ago, I thought my family was destroyed beyond repair. I was ready to press charges against my own son. But you didn't. No, I gave him one last chance to prove he could change. And to my surprise, he has. That took tremendous courage. Both the confrontation and the forgiveness. I thought about that long, difficult journey. The birthday forgotten. The trust betrayed. The elaborate deception. The painful confrontation. And then, gradually, the rebuilding, the small steps toward reconciliation, the hard work of earning back trust. The funny thing is, I said, when I finally stood up for myself, when I stopped being their ATM and demanded respect, that's when real healing became possible. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to say no. George raised his coffee cup in a toast. To setting boundaries, I clinked my cup against his, and to second chances. The next day, Benjamin called to invite me to Ethan's soccer game that weekend, not because he wanted anything from me, not because he was maintaining a performance to get his trust fund restored, but simply because he wanted to share his son's achievement with his mother. And as I marked it in my calendar, I realized that this simple moment of genuine family connection was worth more than all the money Richard and I had ever earned. This was the true inheritance I wanted to leave my children and grandchildren, the knowledge that real love has no price tag. That respect cannot be bought. That family means supporting each other, not enabling each other's worst instincts. It had been a painful journey, but we had arrived at a better place, a more honest place, a place where love was measured not in dollars given, but in respect shown, not in checks written, but in boundaries honored. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have given my son. Not the trust fund, not the house in Westchester, but the chance to discover his own strength, the opportunity to build a life of genuine achievement rather than hollow entitlement. As I put down the phone, I smiled to myself. Richard would have been proud, not just of me for finally finding my voice, but of Benjamin for finally finding his way. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below and don't forget to share where you're watching from.